This is a story about the CBC and what they think about the Islamic State terrorists and what they think about Jews and a comparison between those two things. But first I want to remind you about the Islamic State because their terror has continued unabated. Most news organs, especially the CBC, don't even report on it anymore. I mean, they never like to report on terrorism in the first place because they don't like talking about Muslim terrorism, but now they're just bored. So let me give you a 2-minute recap before I tell you this CBC news that I want to today. There is a slow-motion Holocaust going on now in the Middle East. The Nazis this time, though, are called the Islamic State. They're a terrorist group, but they're not just a terrorist group. As their name says, they actually have a state now. They've had it for a few years already. It's not getting any smaller. It's about as big as the United Kingdom in terms of land area. It has almost 10 million people living under its jurisdiction. It has a huge army of terrorists. Some estimates say 200,000 terrorist soldiers. Not all of them are well trained, but some of them are. Some of them, in fact, were former military commanders under Saddam Hussein. But the Holocaust part is what I want to talk about today. The extermination of entire classes of people, entire ethnicities, entire religions, using the most dehumanizing Nazi-like tactics. I'm going to show you some of those now, so viewer discretion advised. I'm going to show you some terrible violence, so please click away if you don't want to see shocking violence. I want to show it to you, though, to prove that they are Nazi-like. The Islamic State truly is reminiscent of the Nazis, lining up men on the edge of pits and mass murdering them. For the crime of being Christian, these Egyptians had their throats slit and the blood drained into the Mediterranean Sea as a message to Europe that they're coming for the Christians there next. Christians, Kurds, Yazidis, even other Muslims who just aren't extreme enough, they're murdered, mass murders, standing on top of IEDs and being detonated. That's one of their ways of murdering. Here they are, burning a Jordanian pilot to death. Why am I showing you these horrible videos? Well, deliberately, so you cannot evade the factual truth about the nature of this terrorist enemy. They are like Hitler in every respect, except they lack the operational ability to carry on things on Nazi Germany's scale so far. But they probably have killed hundreds of thousands of people, and that's mainly men. Women they turn into rape slaves, citing the Quran as justification. Rape often accompanies war, but the Islamic State has made rape not only an official weapon of war, they use it as a recruiting tool to get every sexually repressed loser from the West to join them in the fight. It's a promise of adventure, the chance to kill infidels, the chance to build a Muslim utopia, an Islamic State called the Caliphate, and the official reward is a sex slave, a rape slave. It has emerged that the Islamic State's leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi himself, indulges in rape as a religious and political act. Just stop and think about that depravity for a moment. This American hostage, Kayla Mueller, was captured by the Islamic State, and she was brought to al-Baghdadi's own house to be his personal rape slave, for him to rape at will until he decided to murder her. The dictator of the Islamic State himself engages in rape as an example to his troops. That is Nazi-like depravity. Okay, that's the background. Here's the news. There's a man called Steve Maman, Moroccan-born Jew, who in his own small way wants to do something, anything about this. He wants to rescue some of those rape slaves, especially those from an obscure ethnicity called Yazidis. They're not Jews, of course, there's some other group. Yazidi rape slaves are literally sold in slave markets in the Islamic State. I want to show you a video of some Islamic State terrorists getting excited about buying their rape slaves at the market.
اليوم سوق السبايا، اليوم سوق وما ملكت ايمانكم، اليوم التوزيع باذن الله عز وجل كلنا نصيب. والله يا رجل انا ادور ان شاء الله يعني واحد يهدي لي وحده.
اليوم سوق السبايا اليوم لازم ناخذ.
انا ابيع.
ليش؟
انا ابيع.
ثلاث ورقات.
المسدس.
تختلف إذا عندنا زرق يختلف. أبيعك بكلوب.
خمس ورقات. أو مساء.
حسب الموديل حسب الورقات.
إذا كانت عمرها
لازم نشوفها أنت لازم
نقلبها. نقو يعني نقو.
سنون خمس شلعة شيء.
سنون مالها سنون شرد.
So Steve Maman decided to do something about this. Like our friend Majid El-Shafi, he actually rescues these girls, these rape slaves. Some of these girls have been raped so much they commit suicide. Some are killed by the terrorists, of course, but some are rescued. Almost like Schindler's List, rescuing Jews from the Holocaust. I think there's something poetic about a Jew like Steve Maman today rescuing non-Jews, like 75 years ago, some righteous Gentiles rescued Jews from Hitler. So Steve Maman was invited to talk about his work on the CBC on a show in French called 24 Hours in 60 Minutes. That's the name of the show in CBC French. Everything went well in the interview for the first 6 minutes. The CBC, which is passionately against any fighting of terrorists, totally against our modest military mission over there, found a way to pretend to care about these rape slaves for 6 minutes. I mean, that was liberal enough for them. The CBC host, Anne-Marie Dussault, looked concerned and passionate as she talked about rape slaves. But then Steve Maman just said something he wasn't supposed to say. He said that Canada is actually the best country in the world in terms of rescuing these girls, in terms of providing humanitarian assistance and even allowing these girls to come here as refugees. And just watch the face of Anne-Marie Dussault turn into a snarl, to go from compassionate caring or pretend caring about these girls to disgust and rage that this humanitarian, this modern Oscar Schindler, this redeemer of slaves, this hero, would praise the hated Stephen Harper and Jason Kenney. Here, take a look at when the interview went sideways.
D'un autre côté, il y a la communauté qui savent, vous êtes revenu de chez Daesh, vous avez été vendu plusieurs fois et violé à tort et travers. Donc le suicide est un problème. Il y a un manque de support psychologique, il y a un manque de support financier pour tous ces gens-là. C'est une situation où le Canada a été incroyable. Le Premier ministre du Canada, Stephen Harper, avec le ministre de la Défense et du multiculturalisme, Jason Kenney, se sont présentés en Irak, ont donné 140 millions de dollars d'aide humanitaire aux déplacés. C'est incroyable, c'est héroïque. C'est le seul gouvernement qui a fait ça.
On voit serrer la main. Vous êtes un juif orthodoxe associé aux évangéliques. Le gouvernement Harper, on l'associe au gouvernement. Vous avez des affinités avec le gouvernement actuel.
Je suis en admiration devant notre Premier ministre, Stephen Harper.
Oui. Ah, très bien. Alors, et vous récoltez des fonds pour libérer ces femmes.
Voilà.
Merci, M. Maman. On va revenir sur les enjeux éthiques de tout ça avec un autre invité dans un instant.
Merci.
Did you see that? You're just an Orthodox Jew. That's why you're saying this, you Jew. You're just like those evangelical Christians. Yeah, that's it. That's a connection here. You're no saint. You're a Jew. You're the Jewiest sort of Jew. And what's worse, you like those Christians of the most Christian sort. That's the only reason why you're saying Canada's being heroic here. Your Jewiness gives you an affinity to this government? Oh my God, there's so much to see in that short clip. The CBC doesn't believe in fighting against terrorism. We know that. But the CBC pretends to care deeply about rape victims of the Islamic State, enough to pout and look concerned for the first 6 minutes of her interview. But they care more about hating Stephen Harper than about praising a man who rescues rape victims. Can you imagine that? The CBC hates conservatives more than they love rape victims. And finally, so typical for the CBC, especially in Quebec, they just can't resist reaching for that old-time anti-Semitism. Oh, you're just saying that because you're a Jew, you Jew.
Vous êtes un juif orthodoxe.
Hey, can you tell me why I have to pay for this crap with my taxpayer dollars every year? For TheRebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant.